In today's video, I want to discuss the 11 signs that someone is currently cheating in the relationship or has stepped out of the relationship, and really how to understand those signs. Now remember, one sign by itself does not indicate cheating. It's a combination of these signs. So let's begin with our first sign. And before I go into that, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel if this is the kind of content that you're looking for, relationship content and intuitive content that helps you understand your situation as well as understanding what other people are going through. So let's begin with our first indication. Emotionally distancing or extremely more attentive. So the extreme either or. We normally see the emotionally distancing when somebody has stepped out or is cheating because their mind and their emotions and their feelings are not in the relationship. They're not where they are. They're thinking about all these different things. They're thinking about that other person. They're missing that other person. Maybe they're texting that other person and in communication or want to be in communication with that other person. So when they're in the current relationship with their spouse or significant other, they may appear to be pretty distant, maybe not giving a lot of attention, maybe not hearing things, needing things to be repeated multiple times, or just spacing out altogether. Now, the opposite can also be very true, where someone isn't emotionally distancing, they're actually emotionally there more. They seem to be more present. They seem to be more attentive. It seems like you've gotten this new spouse all of a sudden that's listening to your needs and interested in what you want and what you're doing and interested in taking care of you or running errands and things that you never expected. So it can swing, the pendulum can swing from one extreme to the other. And that could be because the person's covering their tracks, or it could be because that person is getting some sort of fulfillment outside the relationship that they weren't getting in the relationship. And so now they're calmer or maybe more at peace, or maybe they're also maybe feeling bad about what they're currently doing. The second indication is the phone usage, the extreme and frequent texting. And so first off though, I want to remind everybody, if you're with somebody currently that is a major texter that's on the phone all the time and has always been on the phone, this is not a red flag at all. This is an indication only when the texting has obviously changed. When somebody has gone from not using their phone to someone that's constantly texting, constantly responding back, constantly on that phone, that can be a super indication. Unless this person has changed jobs and taken on all these responsibilities at work, there could be somebody on the other line that they're communicating with quite a bit when they're not with that person. The third indication is this new possessiveness of the phone. The phone has now become this holy grail. The phone used to be left on the countertop or the kitchen or by the bed. It was never that big of a deal. It might have been on, it might have been switched off, but now that phone is anywhere that they are at. It's always in their hand, it's always in their pocket. It might be turned over so that you can't see who's calling or who's texting, so the phone is turned over so you can't see that. It could also be turned off at times because that person doesn't want that phone ringing or what have you, but it's definitely always in their possession. It seems to never leave their side. And if this is a new occurrence, this is something to be a little suspectful of. Another indication is when the phone's ringing for them, they take the phone call, they're holding it up to their ear, and you can catch them with their finger like turning down the volume on the side. Now that can be an indication that somebody's super loud and blowing out their eardrum. Definitely that's a possibility. But that might not be the possibility. The possibility could be the fact that you're in such proximity to them. Maybe you're super close to them in the kitchen or in the house, or maybe you two are sitting right next to each other in the car and they're worried that you're going to pick up on what is being said on the phone. And so that's an interesting indication. And if you're catching that a lot and you're not hearing somebody like screaming on the phone, that could be an indication that they don't really want you to hear what's being said, and they don't even want you to really know who's on that other line. Another indication is that they accuse you directly of doing the cheating or stepping out of the marriage or up to dubious things. You know, perhaps you went out with a friend. Who's this friend? What are they about? What are you doing? You were out till XYZ time. I don't know if I can trust you. I don't know about your behavior. I don't know about your actions. And so they pretty much put you on the defensive. And what happens when people put us on the defensive, if we're not doing anything wrong, is we find ourselves trying to prove that we're not doing anything wrong. But also that begins to take over your mind share, and you get so absorbed in trying to prove your innocence that you're not really seeing what's going on around you with that other person. Another interesting indication is that they become hypercritical of you. And what I mean by hypercritical is they begin to find your faults. Like anything that you do wrong, anything that you need to be doing better, anything that you seem to drop the ball on, they start bringing up those things, telling you about it, reminding you about it, kind of prickly about those types of things, making you feel maybe a little insecure, maybe bringing up little comments about looks or this, or maybe your job or whatever it is. But they're never talking about themselves. They're never looking at themselves under the microscope, and they're pointing out those things. And I think a lot of it is to make you feel insecure. But also, I feel a lot of times they're trying to find reasons to justify what they're doing. And then I think also they're doing that to try to devalue you so that they kind of feel okay about what they're doing. Because again, a little bit of this is devaluation because they may be feeling bad about what they're doing. And so they're trying to make themselves feel a little better. An interesting indication is that when somebody has stepped out or currently stepped out or is cheating in the relationship, that same person has a tendency of keeping really strict tabs with the other person. So they want to know where the other person is at all times. They want to know what they're doing. So let's say that they're out of town traveling for business or what have you. They might be calling in more than often. They may be texting more than often, seeing what you're doing, what you're up to. And so you might feel like they're being super attentive, but if you step back, you might realize that in some instances they do reach out and they do check in on you, but then sometimes it's actually not really about that. It's almost like they're keeping tabs on you. So being aware of that kind of activity, especially if somebody usually isn't checking on you to see how you're doing, that can be interesting too. Also kind of thinking about where they are and what they're doing, that can also be an interesting observation. So all these things are observations, and remember, like I said, it's not one or two of these signs, it's multiple of these signs together that really help us to see that there's a possible stepping out in the relationship, whether it's spiritual, mental, emotional, or physical cheating. Another indication is they take a big interest in their outward appearance. Maybe they're now starting to work out all the time, taking care of themselves, losing weight, whatever it is. And by itself, again, this is not the extreme indication, but together. Because if somebody's taking a real interest in their looks and they haven't done that their entire life or the entire time that you've been with them, and it's coupled with some of these other things like this frequent texting or this possessiveness of the phone or the emotional distancing, this is definitely an indication. I mean, because otherwise, if it's just by itself, this person could actually be feeling, hey, I want to get healthy, I want to take care of myself. So we don't want to blow this one out of proportion, but if it's coupled with the other ones, we could be onto something. An interesting indication, and this is something that a lot of times we don't really think about, is when we ask the other person about the person that they've stepped out with, that we don't even know that they've stepped out with, we don't even know that there's anything going on, but when we bring up that person's name, the person that might be having an affair or stepped out with them may talk down about them, talk nasty about them, saying nasty things or derogatory things about this person, basically devaluing this person. And they're doing that for multiple reasons, right? They're devaluing this person that they're having this relationship with to make them look bad in your eyes so that there's no possible way that they could be having a relationship with this person. A good example is, oh, it's not, don't worry about her. She's been divorced twice. She's this and that. I mean, that her life. And that's usually how it sounds. Oh, she's divorced. She's got kids, all this stuff. I mean, come on. But that could be a major red flag, because when somebody devalues someone like that, they're trying to get you off that trail. They're trying to get you to rethink and be like, why am I even bringing this up? I mean, this sounds crazy, but that can be a real red flag, because rarely do you have somebody building that person up. Rarely do you have that person saying, oh yeah, they're a great person, a kind heart, whatever. You don't really hear that, because it's a lot easier to say nasty things for you to think lesser of that person. An interesting indication that I want to bring up is they may bring up this person randomly, okay, in various conversations or certain conversations, and they haven't brought this person up before. It may actually be a new name that you haven't heard, or it can be an old name from the past that you haven't heard in a long time, and they're being brought up in different scenarios. And this is a really deep indication, because it's something that we normally don't catch. Especially if it's a new name, we usually just kind of go on along with it's a new friend that they met or a new work acquaintance or whatever. We don't really see the implication. And so that's definitely an interesting observation and maybe something to ask about. You got to be careful with this. You don't want to go off on every single thing thinking that this is an issue. But if he or she is bringing up this name multiple times and there's no frame of reference as to who it is or this person or where they came from, it might be interesting to ask about who that person is and how they know them. It could be interesting to ask. Another indication is new interest. So new interest of things that are happening with your significant other. Because if you've been with this person for a long time, you kind of know them pretty well. They're kind of set in their ways to a degree. So if this person is eating differently, completely different eating habits. Let's say that the person is completely drinking a different alcoholic beverage than they've ever drank. They're drinking differently. If they're bringing in, some new kind of, maybe in bed, if they're bringing in some new interesting things in bed that you have not seen before, that could also be an indication as well. So there's things that are very interesting to think about, because if you've been with this person for a long time and now they're starting to make changes, where is the change coming from? Now, it could be totally internal. It could be things that they are totally choosing for themselves, or it could be choices that they are making based on how the other person in their life is rubbing off on them. Because a lot of times we take on other people's attitudes sometimes, the likes that they have. Maybe somebody's introducing them to something different, different foods, different drinks, whatever. Different types of levels of intimacy. So this is something to definitely watch out for. Before I go into some of the really thoughtful thoughts and concepts that I want to talk about before you bring this up to your significant other, if you like this video, give us a like on this video. It shows us that we're going in the right direction and that you're liking the content. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, because that really helps us to not only know what to create, but it also makes us feel good that we're on the right track with the content that's important to you. So let's talk about those thoughts, because these thoughts are very important, because we want to really think clearly through this before we bring this up with our significant other. Because if you've been with this person for any amount of time that matters, you care about this person. And if you're in the relationship with them, to some degree, this relationship is extremely important to you. So we need to be delicate with the way that we address things. And we need to make sure that we've really thought through all of these pieces, especially through these 11 types of red flags, and really analyze it and see what really does apply to our current situation. So 1 or 2 signs do not mean that someone is cheating. Not even 3 signs mean that someone's cheating. It could be various different things. But we need to start analyzing to really get to the heart of the matter. Is there something in the relationship that is currently not working? So in your relationship right now, really think about it. Is it communication? Has there been a communication breakdown in your relationship? And has it been over a period of time? Things don't just happen overnight, right? So it seems like it takes a while to create different changes in our relationship, and sometimes it can take a long time to open up communication, as well as sometimes it can take years to close down communication. And so this is something to think about. Is there a lack of intimacy in your relationship currently? Has there been a lack of intimacy for a long time? Is there a lack of sexual intimacy in your relationship? Has that been for a long time? Is there a lack of deep communication and thoughtful communication, spiritual communication in your relationship? These are things to really think about, because people will step out of the relationship for many reasons. Okay, now some of them because there is no lack of any problem. There's no problem at home at all. So some people step out with no problem at home. It's nothing that's happening in the relationship. They just step out. Other people step out because they're not getting what they want at home, spiritually, mentally, or emotional. And so they're not getting the connection that they need somehow. Now, I'm not advocating this one way or another. I'm just saying that if there's a possibility that something's missing in the relationship, that might be the beginning of how to open up the conversation. Because if there's a lack of communication, we have to figure out how to open that up. If there's a lack of intimacy, we need to think about that. If there's a lack of sexual intimacy, how do we begin to bring that up and discuss that? Now, some of these are very touchy subjects, right? They can be really touchy and kind of scary to bring up, but we need to realize if something is lacking, that needs to be addressed first. And if there's nothing lacking and you've really thought about it, then that's a question in and of its own as well, but we need to really think about that. We have a lot of videos addressing marriage, when marriage has turned into the roommate situation, how to identify the roommate situation, how to understand if you're currently in a roommate situation, and the things that you can do to overcome that, how to understand the wedge in the marriage, and that's a video that we have as well. We also have a previous video from years ago on the indications and the red flags of cheating as well. So if we didn't cover something in this video, it will definitely be in that video. But the major takeaway is that you'll want to begin the conversation at some point. You'll want to open the communication. That's the only way we can get through this or even begin to have this conversation. And remember, to me, cheating is a symptom of a bigger issue, right? When somebody's stepping out of the marriage or they're cheating, it's a symptom of the bigger issue, whether that issue is within the relationship or that issue is within that other person. Because remember, we come to a relationship with what we bring to the relationship, and if there are things that we haven't dealt with in our life, we're going to bring those undealt with things into the relationship and be dealing with that through the relationship. If the relationship itself is suffering, or both people are kind of coming to the table with the same situation, that's something that has to be addressed as well. So definitely, if we feel that somebody is stepping out though, and there's a lot of these indications that are matching their behavior, and there's several of them all at one time, that's a red flag for sure. And that's when we really do need to bring up the communication, see how we can address it, see if there is something missing in the relationship, possibly advocate for going through coaching or even, marital coaching or marital counseling and being able to discuss that. But trying to open up the line of communication is key, because if we want to try to save this relationship, we just need to have some honesty and some clarity, and we need to figure out where everybody stands. And then at that point, we can understand what we want to do next. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. As well as you can become a member on this channel too, which is really neat because you get a different type of content too that we offer. And if you like this video, give us a like. In the comment section, let me know, did I leave something out? Is there an indication, a red flag that I left out that you've experienced or that you want to add in? Because there's so many different indications and so many psychological component indications that can be very interesting. For example, like, the turning down of the phone or the various different things like that that you might have picked up on is something that I didn't address in this video. Look forward to hearing those comments as well. And don't forget to live your true life.